His dad used to work at the Holiday Inn in Folkersville with him.
Who did you work with?
Well, he was our bartender in a lobby bar.
How was it?
Yeah, I told that. He said, yeah, so that talked always very highly of him.
Here's that. Are you gonna revive your role as the innkeeper when you retire?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet.
Is there a trip to Hawaii in your future?
Okay. It's 4:00, so let's call the meeting of the Personnel Committee to order. Gentlemen, thank you. Is there any courtesy of the floor? Hearing and seeing none, let's move into a review of the county executive's appointments and reappointments. Children, Youth, and Families Advisory Board, a reappointment for the Children, Youth, and Family Advisory Board to Marcus Grundy from Easton, considered for a 2-year term to begin February 17th, 2023, and to end May 1st, 2025. Can we have a motion, any comments or motion to move this forward?
Move forward.
Thank you. Next, we have another reappointment to the same board for Michelle Hanna from Bangor, 2-year term to begin March 23rd, 2023, and March 22, 2025.
Move forward.
Thank you. Do I need a second? Thank you. Recommendation for reappointment to the same board, Patricia Hunter, Easton, PA, 2-year term, March 23rd, 2023, March 22nd, 2025, end date. Motion to move forward.
Motion. Move forward.
Same board, Rosemary Coker, Easton, PA, considered for the same term, March 23, 2023, ending March 22, 2025.
Move forward.
Thank you. Also, a reappointment for Teresa Terry Maynard from Penargil. Ms. Maynard is considered for a 2-year term to begin February 22nd, 2023, and February 21st, 2025.
Move forward.
Thank you. Reappointment to Terry Thomas, Easton, PA, 2-year term, March 23, 2023, and March 22, 2025.
Move forward.
Thank you. Also, reappointment, Jeff Warren, Bethlehem, PA, 2-year term beginning February 22nd, 2023, and Feb. 21st, 2025.
Question,
Yes.
Warren running for a seat. Now, I would say yes, and move him along with anybody else. I like when people get on these boards, especially in services. Is that potentially a problem, or could he serve? I think he can serve while he's running, but once he's elected, I guess it's because we have, I don't know what the ruling on that would be, because we do contribute to, human services is an intricate part of us, as opposed to the other. I know we give money to the planning commission, I know, I just don't know, I would appreciate, an opinion on that.
I'll for you tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, if that's all clear, I'm sorry, I really am, I thought this was on. My eyes are deceiving me. I'm objecting not to Mr. Warren per se. I'm concerned about the fact that he's running, and if he gets elected, about serving on the Children and Youth Advisory Board. You know,
My guess is that, this is a reappointment, which assumes that he's already serving on that
Yes.
board, so that if he is elected in the middle of his term, then he would have the right to then ask for an opinion and potentially resign. So there's nothing that would get in the way of him serving for the first year.
No, I mean,
Because he's already served.
there may not be anything wrong with him serving while he's on council. I mean, as I said earlier, I would like to have as many people put in for these things as possible, so, excuse me. I mean, I'm not going to object to moving it, because all we do is make recommendations at a committee level. So fine, I'm fine with moving it on, and Chris maybe be able to tell us something tomorrow.
I will take a look at it, and I'll report tomorrow.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. So do I have a motion to move forward?
Move forward. Yeah,
Thank
move
you. That's all for the Children, and Youth and Families Advisory Board. Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, recommendation for an initial appointment as an elected official to Judith A. Haldeman, Northampton, Pennsylvania. Ms. Haldeman is being considered for a one-year term to begin February 17, 2023, and to end December 31st, 2023. Ms. Haldeman will complete the term of Jan Bellarte Beatty, who resigned. Resume is attached.
Make a motion.
Thank you. Next, we have a recommendation for appointment to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Advisory Board. Stephanie Green from Northampton, Pennsylvania, considered for a one-year term, beginning February 17, 2023, and ending March 19, 2024. Ms. Green is being considered for a one-year term to honor the bylaws for the staggering system due to 2022 vacancies. Letter of interest and resume, references and resumes attached.
Motion.
Thank you. Recommendation for a reappointment to the same board is Victoria Bastidas, Bethlehem, PA, considered for a one-year term beginning February 17, 2023, ending March 19, 2024, considered for a one-year term to honor the bylaws for the staggering system due to 2022 vacancies.
Move forward.
Thank you. Another reappointment, John Mauser, Bangor, PA, two-year term to begin February 17, 2023, ending March 19, 2025.
Move forward.
No.
Okay.
I'm submitting, reappointment, Parks, Recreation, Open Space Advisory Board for Rob Knights, Nazareth, PA. Mr. Knights is being considered for a two-year term to begin February 17, 2023, and to end March 19, 2025.
Move forward.
Thank you. And another reappointment, same board, Michael Topping, Fire Lane, Bethlehem, PA, one-year term beginning February 17, 2023, ending March 19, 2024, considered for one-year term to honor the bylaws for the staggering system due to 2022 vacancies.
Move forward.
Thank you. Next, a recommendation for reappointment to the Personnel Appeals Board. James Irwin, Nazareth, PA, considered for a two-year term, February 17th, 2023, ending February 3rd, 2025.
Move. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand up.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. You move it.
I have a question. Mr. Irvin is a union official, is that correct?
Yes, he is.
Now, does this pose some sort of conflict with him being on the Personnel Appeals Board in his role also as a union
Business agent.
official?
Business agent.
Is there a potential for conflict there?
And if I'm talking too loudly into the mic, it's because of complaints. There is that potential, certainly.
Okay.
Did I hear a motion to move forward?
I'll make a motion because I think we should have a full discussion tomorrow night.
Thank you.
I will give you another look-see tomorrow night.
Thoughts? Thank you.
Next, we have a recommendation for reappointment to the same board, Thomas Schlegel, Easton, Pennsylvania, considered for a two-year term to begin February 17, 2023, and to end February 3rd, 2025.
Move forward.
Thank you. Following individual for reappointment to the Personnel Appeals Board, Kathleen Wedge, Catasauqua, PA, two-year term to begin February 17, 2023, and February 3rd, 2025.
Move forward.
Move.
And that is, yes, sir?
This is our former personnel.
This is our former personnel, correct?
Former HR director, yes.
Okay, is this part of Catasauqua, Northampton County, or Lehigh?
If it's North Caddy, it's,
It's Catasauqua.
I think Catasauqua is Northampton.
What part of it? North is not, is that Lehigh?
North Catasauqua is Northampton.
Northampton.
Catasauqua proper is not.
The Catasauqua mailing address doesn't distinguish between North Catasauqua. It's just Catasauqua. She lives in North Catasauqua.
She's Northampton County.
Yes, please.
Someone on the phone identify themselves?
It's Tara. I'm on the
Thank
phone.
you.
I did hear a motion. Are we okay? Thank you. Again, all these can be discussed again tomorrow. Anybody wants to show up tomorrow, that's fine too. Moving into the next, review of personnel requests, Department of Court Administration, Juvenile Justice. Mr. Green is here to discuss these positions with us.
Good afternoon, council. Thank you for having me this afternoon to present my proposal for upgrade of 6 positions of our shift supervisors at the Juvenile Justice Center. This is something I have discussed with council on numerous occasions, dating back till March of last year, about the upgrades that I feel needed to be done with our personnel there. These 6 individuals are the equivalent of the lieutenants in the prison. They are direct supervisor of the youth care workers. They oversee the facility 24 hours, 7 days a week. 6 supervisors. You have 3 of them on day shift, 2 on middle shift, and 1 on night shift. Out of the 6 supervisors, 3 of them are very tenured. They were there when I was the director from 2005 to 2014. They are still there. They are the 3 top ones you see there with their salaries. And they are the backbone of this facility. And what's going on for the last year and a half, 2 years with the shortage of staff members, they are the ones who are keeping this facility going with the administration. They are consummate professionals. If you go and visit that facility and one of the supervisors come to the door, they're coming, the males are coming with a shirt and tie on. That's what we expect of them. We wanted them to separate themselves from the youth care workers and their duties. The women there are wearing business attire as well. They're on the floor 24/7. They are the ones who are in the trenches when it needs to happen, especially now with the youth care workers, a shortage. They have to do youth care worker duties as well. So these are the ones who are covering this facility, and these are the ones we need there to make sure that facility is running correctly. Also in this upgrade, what it provides promotion incentive for the youth care workers after these supervisors leave. 5 of these positions are filled right now. There's 1 vacant. Mr. Jamar Billman called me last week, and that they have a potential youth care worker who is going to step up into this position that they interviewed. So these supervisors, 3 of them right now have bachelor's degrees, 2 of them has associate's degree, 1 has a master's degree. So they are separated, and that's why I think they need to be compensated accordingly. And I'm not saying anything about the lieutenants at the prison, the lieutenants in the prison, and that's where I think they should be. Any questions?
Mr. Cusick?
Thank you for bringing this to us. I think we're all well aware of the situation, and we've anxiously awaited something to be done to fill those positions. Yeah, unfortunately, I have an open house tomorrow, so I won't be able to support this, but I do support it now, and I wanted to let you know that.
Good.
I think one of the concerns that was raised by the administration one of these times was whether or not you would seek to poach employees.
Listen, as I said, I don't have to poach employees. I don't. They come to the courts. They want to work for the courts. Okay? I don't have to poach employees. And I think that was a little drug out because that's not something new in the county. I've been here 23 years, and people have been jumping around department to department to make more money. And that's what we have right now. People need to make more money. It's that simple. The youth care workers down there, they're still, and I'm sure that's going to be your next question, where we're at with the union, the arbitration. They still don't have a date. They still don't have a date. And I've been talking about this since March of last year. I've been asking them to come to the table. All right? And at this point, I can't put that on Mr. McClure, because Mr. McClure, and I know he doesn't want to speak about it publicly, and this is the last time I'll speak about it publicly. He offered them what I asked for. He offered them. They denied it. So I've done my job. So now the union needs to do their job to get these people the money they need. Mr. McClure did that, and I thanked him for that. I asked him to be at $19 and some change. He gave it to him. Now there's another issue. I don't know what that issue is, because I'm not going to entrench myself in that, but I feel I've done my job. I came before this council. I asked for those youth care workers that have $19, almost $20, and Mr. McClure acquiesced to that. And again, publicly, I thank him for that. But his hands are tied now. My hands are tied now. Now it's the union's time to do their job. These people need to be paid.
I agree with you, and that's why, like I said, I support this, and I'm hopeful that they'll come to their senses and reach an amicable agreement soon. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Cusick. Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Mr. President,
Is this in your budget already?
it is. We have it in our budget.
That's all that matters.
Do I have a motion to move this forward if there are no other questions?
Motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have an amended personnel request for Department Administration Conservation District.
The papers.
I guess I'm confused.
Basically, what it is they gave us the wrong calculation for the salary when we approved it during the budget time.
The calculation in the resolution, I believe, was incorrect. The budget book was correct, so therefore we're just clarifying that so the person can be put on the right scale, which was budgeted for and passed via ordinance.
Okay, I mean, I guess, I'm still confused though, because I'm looking at the paperwork and it says 23, so where was the error? And this piece of paper here, or the error was in the budget? Like, I don't understand.
The error was in the regular resolution. The money is in the budget. Therefore, we're just making the resolution look like what was actually allotted monetarily in the budget.
Right, but the original one says 23, so it's still a raise, so, like, that's why I don't, you're asking us to really upgrade this, aren't you?
No.
No, I'm asking you to,
The calculations we were given when we prepared the resolution during the budget process was different than what was in the budget book.
I see. So
So
this
now
is
they're just
aligning the two?
Right.
Got it. Thank you. So, I guess, any question, other than my own confusion? And then move forward, motion to move forward?
Yeah, motion.
Thank you. And that's, if there's nothing else under personnel, we are adjourned.
Is that it? That's it? Okay. Thank you. We will now commence with the Finance Committee meeting. Courtesy of the floor for the Finance Committee meeting. Seeing no one, we'll end that. And we're going to start with controller reports. The controller is here, and you can go right down the line and do your reports.
Thank you. I have 3 reports for you this afternoon.
The first two I'll join together because they're basically the same. We did a financial audit of MDJ Schlegel and MDJ Tashner, and we have audited the accompanying statements of changes in assets and liabilities, cash balance, as of the latest time period for them. In our opinion, financial statements referred to present fairly in all material respects the statement of changes in assets and liabilities, cash balance as of December 31st, 2020 and December 31st, 2021 in accordance with cash basis of accounting. As part of obtaining reasonable assurance about whether the MDC's financial statements are free of material misstatements, we perform tests of the compliance with certain provisions of law, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, non-compliance with which we have a direct and material effect on the determination of financial statements amounts. The result in our test disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. We conducted our audits in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. I do want to add to that we did receive information from the State Auditor General's office. They will be coming in this year to audit 11 of our district justices. Now, let me just tell you what they're looking for. The objective of their audits is to determine whether the Commonwealth's portion of fines, costs, fees, or other surcharges are properly assessed, collected, and remitted to the Commonwealth based on applicable Pennsylvania laws and regulations. So they'll be coming in this year. Any questions on those? Yes, sir.
I had one on the Tashner audit. Amongst the liabilities, there's a local fine for PA Cyber Charter School. Can you explain how that is? It's only $8, but
I see the $8 charge, but I have no backup for those things with me tonight.
okay. Well, if you could just let me know, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, that will be on the auditor's work papers. Any other questions?
Any other questions, members of council? I didn't continue. Oh, I'm
Yes,
sorry,
sir.
Mr. Myers.
Just out of curiosity, because these are both marked 2021, are these a year behind?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that, I think, is Tashner retired, so this is her final audit? So that's what it would be. All right, the next thing we did was a agreed-upon procedures report for the procurement card program as of September 1st, 2022. We did a number of procedures. The first procedure was, for the period under review, report the total number of approved transactions that do not currently have an uploaded receipt in the work system, and provide the list to procurement division. There was one transaction for international fees which did not produce a receipt. All other transactions for the period had uploaded receipts in the work system. These results were communicated to procurement. Second procedure is to create a data file in Works for all transactions between September 2nd, 2021 and September 1st, 2022, and export it to an Excel file. Compare the exported files to the total population in Works to ensure the validity of the Excel data file that will be used for further analysis. Report the total number of transactions for the period to procurement using technical available in ACL, which is a data analysis software. We use that for a lot of our comparisons. Report the total number of transactions for the period. Using the techniques, we can attempt to identify statistical anomalies in wherever evidence is found that these were caused by intentional or an intentional attempt to circumvent the procurement division policies and procedures. Provide a list to procurement division of these statistical anomalies. Our findings were we verified the validity of the downloaded Excel data file and reported 7,616 transactions to procurement. We performed an analysis looking for statistical anomalies and found no evidence that any individual was intentionally trying to circumvent the P-card program, and all purchases appeared to be for related work. Third procedure, using our ACL data analysis file, is to compare human resources files of terminated employees to current cardholder list. No records were found to indicate that terminated employees were either active P-card holders or had any transactions in the works for the period tested. Fourth procedure was to inquire as to the procurement cutoff date for 2021, to identify purchase transactions that were made after the cutoff date. We tested 10 transactions to ensure compliance with the year-end cutoff date. 1 transaction was approved by procurement, and the remaining 9 were approved by the Director of Fiscal Affairs. The next procedure was to inspect the created data file for September 2nd through September 2nd, 2021 to September 1st, 2022 for fixed asset purchases. The fixed asset thresholds were obtained from Fiscal Affairs. A report was run of all transactions for the audit period by county orgs. 6 of the 10 samples were fixed assets. We verified that they were in the One Solution fixed asset report, and the list was provided to procurement. The next procedure we used in our ACL data software was to, again, for the time period, look for the following. A, high dollar purchases over $5,000 to determine from uploaded receipts if the proper quotes were obtained. B, split purchases to determine from uploaded receipts if transactions were structured to circumvent the procurement policies and procedure transaction times. C, purchases made on a weekend for divisions that are not 24/7 operations to determine if transactions were appropriate for the cardholder and respect to their normal working hours. And D was to select a sample of 10% of the total transactions or 10 transactions from each group, which is greater. Report to procurement any adverse issues related to analysis, and provide a copy of the complete list of transactions for the above to the procurement division. Findings, we reviewed 17 high dollar transactions, and all transactions were in compliance with procedures and policies. There were 32 transactions identified as possible split transactions, but after reviewing the transactions and communicating with the cardholders, it does not appear that these transactions were split to circumvent P-card limits.
Mr.
Yes.
Controller, it's me, it's Mr. Ackman. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Since you're at this point. When you say, you know, the process, and you went and your office checked, and it did not appear that they were split, there's 32. Is it what's the process? That you talk to the individual, because it's 32. Is it that they don't understand how to use these because these have been out a long time, or that they didn't follow the proper, but your assessment is nobody did anything on purpose? But anyway, so
Okay, yes, we do check with them. And what we found, it did not appear that they were split to circumvent P-card rules.
Yeah. And that process you use to determine that is just an interview process with them?
The process to determine it, we use a software called ACL.
Okay.
And that's Audit Command Language. And that is a comparison software. And that shows us things that pop out like split transactions.
Okay.
And then we go from there. And we'll talk to the person or the department head to find out what the reason was for the split, and if it was legitimate or if it was an intention to circumvent the rules and regulations.
And in whatever, all the things you've done, you didn't find any of that?
That is correct.
All right. I was just curious about the process, so thank you.
Okay, let me see, where did I leave off? All right, the 7th procedure was using our ACL analytical software. We select a random sample of 50 transactions for testing from the created data file to analyze, to select to determine if purchases, if they adhered to the procedures and policies, appropriate documentation was uploaded into Works, purchase was for job-related goods and services, and no sales tax was paid. And D, posting in Works was an appropriate org center, cost center, and authorized signer. All travel expenses are in compliance with current travel and meal and mileage policies as stated in the employee policy manual, and the gift cards gift cards purchased have proper approval. 46 transactions were tested. They conform to procedure policies and procedures. There was one instance, an order acknowledgement was attached in lieu of an actual invoice. but the cardholder provided us with the actual invoice. There were 3 transactions where the county improperly paid the sales tax. And we give all this information to the procurement manager. We conducted these agreed-upon procedures engagements in accordance with generally accepted government accounting standards. That concludes the report for that.
Are there any questions for the controller this time?
I do want to add one more thing. I
go
missed reporting this at last month's meeting. We were very pleased. Back in December, we had a auditor from York County come to our county to learn how we did our hotel audits. They had a change of personnel in York, and they were not doing hotel audits anymore. So they came, they sent somebody here to learn how we did. The person spent the day with us, and we showed them how we do the hotel audits, so they can go back and start doing hotel audits.
Fair enough. Good. If there's no questions for the controller, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move on. The next topic is the RFP updates for the pay and benefit study and Graceville operational study. Before we start, let me request, this is an official meeting, it's a committee meeting, but I would request that before you speak, you get permission from the chair. That includes the folks out there. And just because you may walk up to the podium doesn't mean you're going to be acknowledged. So if you want to be acknowledged, let me know there's something you want to say. I mean, otherwise, if somebody's talking, you may stand there for a while. I just want to let you know that up front. So, all right, I assume that we'll begin this by having Mr. Barron come up, since he wanted this on the agenda. And why don't you come up and say what you want to say?
Absolutely. So we'll start, or I will start, with the first thing, the wage and compensation study. So results of the RFP that was put together by County Council, we had 54 people access and download the study. We had 2 bids come in and 1 no bid. Procurement presented the RFPs with the, written requirements. So we basically put council's RFP out as it was written with the required language under the administrative code. We did not change anything, so you are aware. So 1 bidder of the 2 that actually bid on the job put this letter on the very top of their RFP, okay? And they disqualified themselves with this letter, and I will explain. It says, specifically, the county agrees to the limited use sole purpose of this project, RFP 0502231. Also, the county agrees the information contained in this proposal contains private and confidential information. And I was concerned because this is a very public process. People are going to want to know how we determine their salaries, and we want to keep it very open and transparent. When I opened the 1 bid that we did receive from Bolton, and Mr. Dave Johnson is here today, I was very impressed with what their company had to provide. You have a presentation here today, and Mr. Johnson is here. What I have done, as long as council is okay with this, you'll notice there's no resolution on your agenda, which is now published for tomorrow. What I wanted to do, because I will also explain the Graysdale study. As you can see here, formulation of a committee based on the timeline that council put out would not be very efficient in this case. So I brought Mr. Johnson in so he can go over his presentation that I have provided you with. Having you vote on that tomorrow would be kind of crazy. So what I did was I would propose that I will give you a resolution for your next council meeting on March 2nd. Therefore, Mr. Johnson and Bolton and the people who would be engaged in this study for the county would actually you'd be able to ask them questions, talk about anything they might have if you want to do so privately, if you come up with something in the interim that you don't ask him publicly at this meeting today. That's all I have about this particular RFP, and we'll do Graysdale afterwards. But I'm going to have Mr. Johnson come up, if that's
Not yet.
okay? Okay.
I'm sorry, let me interject, because council may have questions for you before
Sure.
any presentation is done. Are there any members of council that have questions? Ms. Hefner?
So, Mr. Barron, what date was the RFP put out?
It was put out the date that Mr. McClure mentioned in the meeting. I don't recall what date that
All right,
was.
I do believe that was November 19th.
Yes.
Take 24 hours. And so what was the return date on that?
It was based on the administrative code. I want to say it was 60 days from there.
So when did you get the bids back, and when did you open the bid?
It was done, I don't have my calendar in front of me. It was probably done about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
So my question is, why wasn't council notified that you had 2 bids? Why weren't they notified that you had 54 hits and that you had 1 no bid? And why wasn't that information shared with council prior to today?
There was not a council meeting to do so in
There
the
was a
public
request
manner.
from council staff to you directly several times.
Those things should be vetted in public.
There was a request from council to ask information, and that while that may be your opinion, this is a bid from council, and council said, did you get things back? And there was no yes or no answer, correct, staff? No yes or no answer. So I just don't understand, because if we weren't satisfied with just 2 bids, would we not have had the right to go and ask for a rebid?
You would have had to pass another ordinance to do a rebid. So if you'd like to do that.
Maybe you want to explain the procurement process to me, because when we do this for audit, we don't have to go through that.
The audit is actually recommended and prescribed in the Home Rule Charter. If you read Article 13 of the Administrative Code, council's only role is to approve over $100,000, and council is only invited into a committee if one is formed. In this case, for both of these RFPs under Article 13.09E of the Administrative Code, the county executive may put together a committee. May is, you don't have to, and we did not. And if we do put together a committee, a council member of council, not staff member, a member of council, can be invited to be present at that. The RFP was online. The opening of the bids was attended by the Controller's Office, and any member of council at any time could go to those. It's advertised, it's open to the public.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
No, I do have the floor, but I just find this to be ludicrous. Because, I'm going to speak now, you don't have to answer. Because we did this in good faith. We had to get an ordinance because you wouldn't respond to a resolution. We had to veto an ordinance. We had to go through this ridiculous process. And all we wanted to know was how many bids we had, and we couldn't get a simple answer. And now, I guess we have to go back to Chris and see if we didn't write the right language or because we didn't request a committee. This is a council process. Council requested to do this. Council wanted to oversee this, and these are studies that were to be conducted by council.
Article 13 does not prescribe you to contract for this service outside of the county executive.
Could you weigh in on that, please?
Council's aware that I shared communication that I had with the administration when this was raised to me last week, and I would report that I was somewhat disappointed with and I'll be charitable, the tart response.
Mr. Solicitor, would you please read that correspondence?
I don't know if I have that with me.
There it is. No, I mean, I think what Ms. Hefner's getting to is, we have to work with each other. And if we're going to go back and forth on, I may do this or we may not, and it's on the public website, you guys got to do, this is unique to me, and I've been around for 30 years. Everything we do seems to be a lawsuit sometimes, like, I'm going to outwit you, I'm going to outwit you. We're supposed to work, we're in co-equal branches of government. Now, the administrative code is fine, but if you go to the charter, which trumps everything, and let's be honest, both the administrative code and the charter, you can drive a truck through all the holes in them. I mean, it's crazy. And I'm not going to say the executive's wrong in that you can make an argument for just about anything. I mean, he could probably make an argument that he has the right to set the the price of tea in America, and, you know, without somebody saying you can't do that. So I'm just going to say, under section in the charter, county council powers, the county council shall have, among other things, the following powers. And number 8, paragraph 8, to require periodic and special reports from elected officials and their subordinates. The executive has said he's the boss. That means everybody in general government is a subordinate. We can have anybody request. Now, they can say, no, I don't want to talk, and then we can go through that nonsense of subpoenas, which I don't think we should do. So I don't see us making any headway by playing this game of chess. Let me finish.
I'm
Playing
letting you
this game
finish.
of, yeah, you can see when you're getting antsy, Steve, I know you. But here's the thing. This goes back to March, when the request was made. And I know he's been very clear. He does not think these are necessary. He does not believe that we need to do this, either of these. And that's fair. We don't always agree on council. That's part of the process. He has every right to not agree. But you know, I know, the rest of the council knows, that this process is something that council wanted to do. It voted on it. It did a resolution. And I would submit, and we'll have our solicitor, because this isn't about me knowing what the rules are, this is the law, in the sense that we'll get his opinion on all of this. This is just my opinion right now. And my opinion is, this has been dragged out and parsed out, and because you don't really want to do it. Frankly, I think we should get every one of the 54 responses turned over to us.
Oh, we didn't have 54 responses.
All right,
54
yes.
people downloaded.
All the
We had
responses.
two responses, one bid.
Okay.
And to be honest, you asked me to come here. I put it on the
I didn't
agenda.
ask
I
you
knew
to
it was
come here.
important. Why? I put it on the agenda because I knew it was important.
Did you say that again? I didn't hear you, Ron. When did you say?
Well, no, I
I'm
mean,
here.
I'm not trying to be a wise guy. Wait,
I'm reporting to
you
council.
won't be recognized until
Excuse me.
Mr. Executive, you're
Well,
not recognized.
I understand I'm not recognized, but we'll be removing ourselves from this meeting if
Then remove yourself.
we're not permitted to present to you what we've done in accordance with the charter.
I'm talking to you in
administrative
accordance
code-
with the charter.
Yes, I am too.
Well-
And what we have done is what you have asked us to do. And that's what Mr. Barron was trying to get to. I mean, I understand you're taking issue with the process. I appreciate that, but he's here to explain to you what we've done.
Mr. Solicitor, who's running this meeting?
You are the chairperson, and you are running this pursuant to the rules of council, Robert's Rules of Order. People may only be recognized upon your authority.
Fine, okay. Ms. Hefner.
Could I go, because you,
No,
You rightfully came in,
I
and that's
hate
fine.
that these things go like this.
I do
but-
too.
But at the end of the day, this was an end run around council. And using a provision of this and a provision of that, and having the people show up, I didn't even know the people were showing up today. And Steve, before you come up, because I want you to talk, I mean, you talk, we go back and forth, but the thing is, we didn't know these people were coming. And I'm not going to make them leave without saying something. I was brought to me, and I said, well, if they're here, I think it would be unfair not to have them speak. I want you to know, though, that we were totally unaware of this until a few minutes before the meeting started. This has happened before. It's a game, and I'm going to say it's a game. It's not a legal term. It's a government term, and it's used a lot. It's a game. And frankly, maybe I'm getting too old, and I'll admit that, because I am old, but it's getting tiresome. Every single thing is a pushback and a game, and that's my opinion. And so I'm fine. Does anybody else have anything? And then I'll have Steve, and you can ask a question of anybody out there. I will not interrupt you, but I just want to, this happens too often. And there should be control, council should control council's meetings, just as we don't bust into a cabinet meeting. Maybe we should put that out as a charter revision. But the thing is, council's very concerned about this. I've gotten a lot of calls from people about how this process was handled, how this bid came in at a certain amount. why these people were picked. One who's already working at Graysdale. When council initiated this over the objections of the administration, which I admitted, that's fine. I think Mr. McClure has every right to object to this or say it's a waste of money. He has that right. But I think council does have certain requirements and certain privileges and duties and responsibilities under the charter. So I'll recognize somebody else. Mr. Gofredo. Sorry. Oh, I'll let him.
Mr. Barron, can you answer a question for me, please?
Who do you want to talk to?
Mr. Barron.
Please, Steve, come on up.
I'm just reading through the ordinance. The 254 employees, I'm assuming those are all of the non-union employees?
It's approximately that. I'm not going to hold you to the ordinance number because that does change, and if there are vacancies in that position. When that was put together, it was approximately that. Mr. Johnson can sort of explain that process. Yeah.
My main question is there something in the ordinance, because I looked through it a couple times, that explicitly excluded the union positions from being looked at?
There were, in the RFP, there was conflicting.
Verbatim.
There were.
Anything in here.
There were actually, there was confusion about that. There were questions that were asked about that. And the questions as they were answered via the RFP were that council had made it clear in their meetings that the union positions were excluded. So the bid is actually for the non-union positions.
Okay, thank you.
I just to answer your question.
Mr. Solicitor, are we within our rights as a council to also be doing a pay study for the union employees inside the county?
The discussion, as I recall it, and I was very clear about this at the time, and I want to be clear again tonight, I am very concerned that a pay study may be deemed as an unfair labor practice with their collective bargaining agreements. There are agreements, as I understand it, and Mr. McClure will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are 14 bargaining units in the county. Each one has a collective bargaining agreement, which is sacrosanct. So the question then becomes is that would it be appropriate for council to invade the collective bargaining agreement with their wages and their benefits,
I'm
whatever?
more concerned about legality. Appropriate is, as far as your opinion, your legal opinion, are we within our rights?
You may be in your rights, but it may be inappropriate under the collective bargaining agreement. I'm not prepared to say that tonight without some research.
Okay, and then the gentleman's name from the company that proposed is,
Mr. Dave Johnson.
can I ask him one question, please,
Why
Mr.
don't
Chair?
we wait until everybody's exhausted themselves with Mr. Barron?
Okay.
He does want to
He's
explain.
going to make his presentation.
Yeah, he has a presentation that you guys have a copy of, and I don't know if that would answer your question, but I'm sure he will answer your question.
Thank you.
And let me just make a point of information. I'm going to let him make his presentation, and let's hold off on any questions and that until the man has it. I don't know if it's the man.
Yes, gentleman, yes.
Mr. Johnson. Let him make his presentation, and then if there are any questions, we can do it. And I would say to the solicitor, as you review what you were asked by Mr. Fredo, the council is responsible for setting the wages of the people of the county. We vote on it, correct?
If
It
I may,
says set wages.
you approve
We
the collective
approve.
bargaining agreements, correct?
So asking for as much, if council wants as much information as possible to know when we're asked to approve, which means we can either accept or reject the results of a negotiation, we should be able to collect as much information as we want. For example, I could say, I want to, like at Lehigh County and Bucks County, I want to know what you pay X, Y, and Z, classifications, not people, so that when I get a contract, and we should get the entire contract when we vote on it, because if not, then why are we voting? I mean, I come down to this so often. If council doesn't want to know things, why are you even here? So the thing is, I would think that it's part of our responsibility and also our right under the charter to request information independent. And if the union or the administration has a problem with that, then they would go to a judge and ask for a declaratory statement saying they shouldn't be able to do that. And like, what's your say on that, sir?
Well, there's the legality of that discussion, and then there's the practical point. I have always been a proponent for doing this for 45 years, that it is not good optics to have one form of government and another segment of the same government in court.
I agree with you 100%.
We have done that on occasion, and we have tried to avoid that at all costs, and I would continue to do that.
And having said that, I agree with you. But if, and you've heard this discussion we've had so far on this, and you've had your communications, which before we're done, you're going to be able to read. If we come to loggerheads, and apparently we're just not getting the information we want, which under the charter, we have a right to information, or if we feel that we need more, the appearance or the proper, I think we may have crossed the line on a few proper things as far as our working relationship. I get concerned about that as we go on, but I accept the thing without the unions. I'm not going to push for that. I think we should look at all of them so that we get a better sense. But if that's council's prerogative, the majority not to, I'm fine with that. But I just wanted to throw into you that you're mentioning legal and proper, and we could get hit up for an unfair practice.
May I?
And they'd have to prove that.
May I?
Yeah, by all means, sir.
At the end of the day, I have one master, and that is to advocate and represent counsel, and that is done by motion, second, and vote, and I will continue to do that, whatever that is.
Thank you. All right, I'm sorry. I just wanted to get that clarified. Is there anyone else that has a question for Mr. Barron before we get to the presentation?
Well, I don't know that I have a question. I just wanted, I assume we're going to go through the same process with Graysdale separately. Are we allowed to ask for those numbers on the bids now also?
Let's do one at a time.
One at a time.
I think it
Okay, and I
keeps it
just
clean.
wanted to state that to the representatives that are here to offer this, I apologize that we're going through this exercise, but please understand where we're coming from is that we put out this thing in good faith and have been met with resistance all along, and so we need to clear this up to clear the way to be able to hear you without prejudice. So I apologize, but it has nothing to do with your company and what you can or can't do for us. If you could see me behind Mr. Barron. So my concern is just that we've done this in good faith. It seems circumvented, and to not even communicate with our clerks, to not communicate with our solicitor, which you had asked him to read this, and I hope that he will. I'm just disheartened by this, and I don't know if we want to hear one vendor, or do we want to ask to send it out again? Because we did agree as a unit, and we had several meetings and governance committee meetings. Even the way the RFP was put out was we stated in our governance committee meetings that we weren't going to put it out until we gave it to council, and then it was announced that night. It was done this morning. So there has just been poor communication all the way around on this matter. And if you want to read what my weigh-in on the union piece, however, is it did become a discussion about whether we could or couldn't. I do hear Mr. Spadoni's concerns, but what we're looking at is pay overall for positions and not union versus non-union. So if globally they were able to just look at something and say, this is a fair beginning point, or this is an unfair beginning point for this position, labor or not, I think we should have the right to expand our request a little bit. And no, we're not going to get into telling the unions what they can or can't do. I think the fear is that if the unions get a hold of this information, it's going to be an unfair leverage in their next negotiation. But all we did, and all my effort was ever to do, was to get a fair wage in this county for our workers and to make sure we were on point with that. And so how can we do that if we can't even get to square one? It's just very disheartening. And the same thing with Graysdale. As we get to that, to have an independent look, not one that's controlled by the administration. So if I defer to the solicitor.
I don't know if he has anything to say.
Just one question.
Mr. Myers.
I just want clarification. We put these RFPs out. Weren't we the ones supposed to approve them? Or is that Am I reading something wrong here?
County council does not have the ability to contract with an outside vendor. It must be signed by the county executive. We control that under Article 13 of the Administrative Code. The only exception to that is when county council hires the external auditor, which is prescribed in the Home Rule Charter.
So is your point that because it's not prescribed specifically,
In that
it's not allowed?
Well, I didn't say that. What I am saying is, in this specific situation for the salary study, there was 2 bids. One person specifically said, you have to keep everything you do secret. And I don't think a government, personally, and I see Mr. Cusick shaking his head and Mr. Meyer shaking his head, I don't think a government should operate that way. When somebody put in a no bid, it basically means they downloaded the information. They're giving us the courtesy of saying, if you're waiting for us to bid, we're not bidding on this job. They didn't tell us the reason. And one person bid the job with the timeline, with what I believe is a very reasonable price. Their presentation is here, and they are the only responsible bidder. Therefore, I decided to bring them forward.
Go ahead.
And there's a equally logical rationale for the second point I brought to the.
Let's take one bite of the apple.
One bite at a
I
time,
think
but
that,
there,
I want us to choke.
honestly, there is one person, and, I cannot allow the second person who bid, I'm not even mentioning the company's name, cannot allow them to bid. There's too many exceptions, and it's not good government.
All right. Any questions? Ms. Heffner, you saw.
My only question now is, if we did choose to hire these vendors, who will they report to?
So they will provide updates to county council, but the day-to-day operations of the county is run by the executive. So Bolton will work with myself, with HR, to gather the information, and they will present you with their independent study and then recommendations for implementation. I don't expect to spend a lot of time with them. I expect to give them the HR, give them the data they require, and have them do their thing.
You done? If we were to request to see the RFP you put out on our behalf, would you submit it to council for review?
Actually, it's the same one you had here in county council. It didn't change. Kathy will gladly provide it, but it's the one that Aileen wrote, I believe.
Do we have that?
You should. If not, I will gladly give it to you. You'll have it tomorrow morning.
No, thank you. I just, and then,
Yeah, but we don't know what the final put out was, because there were things that we had talked about an hour before that we had chosen and discussed in committee that we wanted to amend, that we didn't get to because we were told it was put out that morning. So I don't know what went out.
all right, before, and I'm going to let he make his presentation. So thank you, you're going to present it, and then you can look and you can compare, and you can go from there. Mr. Solicitor, you have the floor.
Well, I'm the master of the obvious. The solution is, and I think Mr. Barron's open to this, provide us with a copy that was published.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's it.
Thank you.
Yep, you got it.
I'm sorry.
You're supposed to read a
Do
letter.
you want to read it now?
I didn't want to read it. Do you want me to read it?
Well, I mean, it's up to you. If you don't want to, you don't have to.
I think
You had communication with the executive, and I think you pointed out that it's troubling, and that's part of what bothers me. I found it troubling. We're not in a court of law. As I started this out, we work together. I mean, whether we like it or not, and if we're going to look at commas and periods and get snarky with each other, we're not going to get anywhere. I mean, even if I agree, which I do at 99% of the policies, it's just sad. I was stunned, frankly. I mean, I like to verbal parry up here with anybody else, but I mean, this is important, and I thought it was totally inappropriate. But that's up to the solicitor. I'm not going to, I can't force him to do anything.
The point has been made. I think we can move on.
Yes, so why don't you come up, and if that's all right with you, they can come on up and do a presentation.
So members of council, I have Dave Johnson here. He is from Bolton Benefits Actuarial Investments and Compensation Consulting. They are out of Virginia. I've had meetings with them. They have a whole team that's going to come in. Mr. Johnson happens to be the person who deals with benefits, fringe benefits, i.e. Paid time off, healthcare benefits, and things like that for his team. So he's going to present the presentation that you have here, and you could feel free to ask him any questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Barron.
Mr. Johnson, I mean, would you repeat your name and your title for the clerk so she can record it?
Gladly. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Johnson. I am the Public Sector Practice Leader for Bolton Health. So I run our Health and Welfare Benefits Division at Bolton. And it is a pleasure to be here today to talk about how we can assist the county in doing a compensation study so that we can give the county the information that's necessary to help improve the engagement, the recruitment, and the retention of employees. So that's my task, I think, today, is to be able to give you an overview of what we have proposed to do and to answer questions that any of you may have about our proposal. I do want to mention, as Mr. Barron said, my role within Bolton is focused on benefits. The gentleman who will lead the study, should you move forward working with Bolton, is Dan Ripberger. And Dan had a prior commitment to be with another client today, and that's why Dan is not able to be here. So I just want to mention the caveat up front. I will be very transparent with you as you ask questions. If I know the answer, I will answer it. If I don't know the answer, I will let you know. That is a question that's better answered by another member of my team.
Mr. Bolton, let me just say, yeah, don't worry. I mean, after everything, this was a family discussion, and a Northampton County family discussion, which I'm sure will be carried on in the ethosphere for a while to come. But our bark is far worse than our bite. In fact, with this council, we don't have much of a bite at all. So the thing is, we thank you for presenting, and there's not going to be any disrespect regardless of what the other things were. So go, if you can't answer something, you can't answer it. So please continue.
Well, thank you. And, one thing I want to mention, just working in the industry as I do, and I think this may be helpful information, and I've worked with public sector clients for many, many, many years, and it is good to be in part of a lively discussion, right? It makes it more interesting. Sometimes I come to a council meeting, and it can be rather, everything's kind of humdrum, but it's always good to see a little passion, I will say. I also want to mention a note about our industry. Today, there is a shortage of people who can do compensation work. I know that because I'm a leader in our firm. I've worked for several of our competitors. There is a shortage of people who do what we do in the compensation arena. So it doesn't surprise me that when the county council puts an RFP out, that there's not a lot of activity to propose on it. The reality is, firms like ours are short-staffed. We only bid on things we know we can do. And there are other firms that will put bids in that simply don't have the staff to get the work done. So again, I think that's not my, I'm not here to talk about like how many bids came in, but I just want to say as an industry expert, I can tell you there's a reason people don't bid on compensation work, and it's because there's simply not enough compensation consultants in the marketplace who know how to do this in the public sector. There's a lot more people who know how to do it in the private industry. There's not enough firms that specialize, which is good for me, right? Because we are in a very niche market working with public sector. So I think Mr. Barron I understand, has given you copies of the presentation, so I'm glad to walk you through. The objectives are to enable you to have the information on where the county stands compared to organizations around Pennsylvania, around the region, to understand what you could do to better position the county to recruit, retain, and engage the employees that you have. I don't have to tell you this, everybody knows there's a severe issue in our country, there's a severe issue in Pennsylvania right now with people it's easy to move somewhere else to make a little bit more money or to get a little bit better benefits. So that's why it's so important as an organization that you have the facts in terms of understanding where you are with your total compensation structure. So our goal is to help, again, provide that information with this total compensation study. So I'm looking on the second slide. The major elements of the program, it begins with a job documentation, understanding what role, what responsibilities that your folks have, and then doing a total market compensation alignment analysis where we can help you understand and have the facts on how does your total compensation, the salary, the benefits, compared to other counties, school systems, the folks that you compete with for talent. And that's also looking at your base pay structures, the pay delivery, and your policies and administration. We're here to give, if you do retain us, to give you objective insights on how your programs, how your compensation, your benefits compare to other organizations. So we're here to present the facts and then leave it to you all working with administration to decide what you want to do with the facts. Our role is to give you the facts. If we look on slide 3, we thought it would be helpful to give you a little bit more background about our firm. So we have been in business for over 40 years. Most of our clients are single and multi-employer public sector organizations. So we work with a lot of counties, a lot of school systems, state governments. We do work for the federal government. We understand the government environment. We understand what it's like to come to a county council like yours and make presentation of our findings. We are headquartered in Maryland. We do have 6 offices around the country. As Mr. Barron mentioned, the work will be managed out of our Virginia office. So this project will be managed out of our Arlington, Virginia office. Any questions about Bolton as a firm?
Up to this point, are there any questions? Otherwise,
Okay.
please continue.
Thank you. So within our rewards practice, and again, I lead our health and welfare benefits practice. Within the rewards practice, we focus on these 5 key things that you see on slide 4. Total reward strategy, the organizational performance and design. So how do we motivate our employees, to perform at a higher level? The classification and comp, which is the base, the core of what we're doing here to talk about today. Also, we do a lot of work around performance management, and then market surveys and research, also a very big component of what we've proposed to do for you all. So this is our bread and butter. We do this all the time for county governments around the region, around the country. The project team, you see me on here as a benefits expert. Again, the project will be led by Dan Rittberger, who has basically wrote the proposal and is very involved in what we put on the table. Dan just had a prior commitment today and is not able to be here, so I'm here in his stead. So, the team includes folks with special expertise in classification, in compensation, and in benefits. Benefits being my expertise. And I have a counterpart who will work with us, who's an actuary who focuses on the retirement benefits. So if you retain us to do this work, we will be able to give you a complete perspective on your salary competitiveness, as well as the competitiveness of your health and welfare benefits and your retirement benefits. Again, the end goal is to give you the facts to understand where you are in comparison to your peer organizations on your total compensation. So any questions about the team?
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. So overall, and we've done this work over and over for lots of organizations, we have a pretty good sense of how long it's going to take. It's a 12-week process. The first 4 weeks are the discovery process. The next 4 weeks are really the first 8 weeks are discovery. The first 4 are the internal discovery. We're gathering the information that we need from working with with the administration to get the data that we need from HR. Market discovery, we're getting information on your peers. Then the preliminary assessment, we're doing our technical work to assimilate all this information we've gathered, looking at you compared to your peer organizations. And then in weeks 12 to 9, we're developing the recommendations, any changes we think would be appropriate, again, to help you recruit, retain, and engage your workforce more effectively. And then week 12, we'll use job descriptions as our primary source for written job content. Again, we do this all the time. We know we can glean a lot from looking at those job descriptions. And then our market analysis will cover all aspects of compensation provided by the county and by your peer organizations. And then to the extent necessary to deliver on the objectives that we're committed to doing, we will also be doing research for your peer organizations that we work with you to help identify. So it's a pretty standard process. There's not a lot of variation in doing compensation studies. There's not like if you talk to our firm, or I've worked for a couple of our competitors, we tend to follow the same process for doing a thorough comp analysis. One of the biggest differences I see as an industry expert who does this work is some firms have really, really large national footprint. Some have very, very small footprint. Bolton has a regional footprint. Most of our work is here on the East Coast. But the work itself tends to be very similar in terms of the steps we take, the kind of data that we get. Again, the difference is just the size of the firms that you may see in an RFP process. The other thing I'll point out is the industry expertise. There are firms who do what we do, but really focus more on manufacturing companies or focus more on IT companies. There are a small number of firms who focus on the public sector like we do. So that's my formal presentation. I would be happy to entertain questions that you have. Again, with the caveat that if you wanted to get into any kind of technical detail on the compensation side, I will have to take your question and take it to Dan Rittberger and my comp team. If you want to go deep on employee benefits, I'd be happy to go deep on employee benefits today and go as deep as you want to go about employee benefits. But on the comp side, we'll defer to Dan Rittberger.
And also what you presented, the overall
Yes, sir.
picture type thing. I just have a question for the clerk, and I'll open it up. How much money did we put aside for these two studies?
We want to say that.
Oh, no, no.
Our bid's already in.
No, hey, it's a matter of public record. It's public record. 400,000, okay.
Might have been 30.
I'll take it.
I have to double check.
400,000.
Because I thought we had a $100,000 budget when we
All
added
right.
two, but I'm not,
He's put in his bid. I mean, that's 400,000. That's what my understanding is. And I tend to agree with that. For the two together, yeah, all right, all told. I'm done. Thank you. Do you have a question?
well, I guess I'm not sure if it's for him or, we have your overview, but we don't have the bid back, what they wrote and said. Are we
Well-
allowed to see that or no?
I will provide that.
Yeah, so why don't we at least allot this gentleman the courtesy of, if we have any overall questions regarding Bolton and his overall process, are there any questions like that? I know there are still questions between us and the administration.
No, I
but
just,
I don't
because I
want,
want to see what they actually said on their bid. I guess my only question is, I mean, you saw our original antagonism here tonight, and so as you do this independently, and your focus is obviously on the compensation, and again, that's what I'd like to see what you said, because I think our hope was that you would give us a fair assessment of what was happening at this juncture, but then also plans to look forward and to stay somewhat competitive forward. So do you think that you can address that
Yes,
for us?
yes.
And about how far do you generally project? I mean, given that the market's changing and workforce is changing, but at this point, what would you advise?
I'm not sure if I understand your question
Like
when you
if
say how
you're
far
going
do
to
you
say
project.
to 5-year, 10-year projections for salaries, or 20-year projections, or 20-year benefits, you know, like, you're going to look at now, but you're going to look at, you know, what's going to help sustain and, because we have to build budgets as
Correct.
well. So, you know, what would your recommendations be?
So I will say, it is a great question. I will say on the employee benefits area, which is my area of expertise, it is extremely difficult to say, here's where the market's going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, partly because we just don't know the level of government intervention that's going to happen on the employee benefit side. I mean, there were a lot of folks that said national health care would, or Affordable Care Act would never pass, and then it passed, and it fundamentally changed how health benefits are operated. On a state level, things happen in the legislative session that we just cannot predict. So it is, I think the main focus is being able to say, here's how you compare today to your peer organizations, recognizing that anything we say about the future, we want to let you know it's extremely difficult to predict the future as it relates to benefits. And I think on the comp side, that is going to be true as well. And we'd rather be fair and say, I'd rather be transparent and say, it's really tough to project where the market is going on compensation. A lot of it depends. The compensation world turned upside down in the pandemic. You know, none of us saw that coming. And all of a sudden, organizations in the private sector was faster to adjust to this than the public sector. The private sector had to adjust very quickly to increasing compensation because there was so much movement of people leaving and going to other manufacturing companies or other financial services. The government was slower, and I think what we've seen now is that the government sector has begun to catch up, where now when we thought people would stay in their government jobs forever, they've found out what their neighbors and their friends are doing, leaving jobs and going elsewhere for better compensation. So, but again, we couldn't predict something like the pandemic and how that fundamentally changed the compensation and benefits landscape.
Agree. Mr. Goffredo, and I'm sorry, Mr. Myers, and Mr. Myers, and I'll just go right down the line.
Mr. Johnson, thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely.
My first question is, does your market analysis include private sector jobs as comps?
Yes,
Okay.
but we're focusing primarily on public sector, but it will include private sector as well.
And personally, I think I understand government employment is different and the benefit packages are substantially more.
Yes.
But I would like to look at an apples to apples being compensation and benefits compared to compensation and benefits, just because we are competing against the private sector.
Absolutely.
People can go leave us and go work for them.
Yes.
So I'd like to see how we at least stack up.
And we will.
Good.
And I agree with your point. And that is something that we do talk with clients about today, that, you know, the good old days was when we only competed against other government employers. It's not that way anymore. Now, within the government sector, we're having to compete with the private sector.
Sure.
Because it's just not, it used to be that nice dividing wall. If you're a government employee, you're probably always going to stay. It's not that way anymore.
I agree.
So great point.
And my next question is kind of long-winded, but let me see if I can explain it briefly. So your scope of work or your price based on what you were described in the RFP, how much of that is based on the actual numbers of positions? Because theoretically, we could increase the scope by 5 times that if we did every employee in the county. I don't like to think that price would go up by 5 times. I like to think that you're going to look at departments, look at how those department pay scales work out.
Right.
And you'll be able to give a brief, okay, if you're working at that department at that level, that's where your pay should be. You're not going to look at Jane Doe. She's been here for 13 years. She should get paid that much, correct?
Correct. Yes.
very much.
But now I do want to defer to my colleague Dan Ripberger to give you a more precise number about how changing the jobs will change
And
the
I-
rates.
I
But your
anticipate
point is a
it
good one, that it doesn't go up. If you double the number of jobs, it doesn't mean we're going to double the. On the benefit side, completely different story, because, to the extent you're offering the same benefits to everyone, whether we do it for 200 jobs or 1,000 jobs, that's really not going to matter, as long as the benefits are the same.
Right. Thank you. That's it.
Sure.
Mr. Myers.
You pretty much answered the questions that I was going to ask, but the only issue with that is you're going to compare on the same level or competition with the benefits package when the private sector doesn't give this benefits package that our people get. How's that going to wash?
Well, our job will be to give you the facts about what is happening. I mean, both with government and with private sector. One of the interesting things about, and a very good question that you're asking, in general, government employers, and I haven't looked at the detail yet for your government, but generally governmental employers have lower out-of-pocket cost for health and welfare benefits, and they typically have lower contributions. However, the private sector has moved ahead of the public sector on things like wellness benefits, voluntary benefits, coverage for infertility coverage, things like that, where the private sector has been very innovative in offering new and different kinds of benefits. So an employee may still have lower premium cost working for a government employer. The health plan may cost less on an out-of-pocket basis, but yet if the employee goes over to work for a manufacturing company, they may get better access to things like diabetes management program or a program to target high blood pressure, because that's where the private sector has really been more innovative in terms of the benefits delivery. Again, our job is to give you the facts on how you compare.
So at this point, my recommendation is we need to talk to the guy who's actually going to tell us about the monetary, correct? Because we're getting the benefits part of it. We need the other access conversation for that.
They said, he's given us 2 meetings, so at the next meeting,
Yes.
he'd be able to come, so, yes. You finished, Mr. Myers? Mr. Kusick?
Just briefly, I thank you for putting up with the beginning of this meeting. It's been a frustrating process to get here. I appreciate the presentation you made. I'm eager to see this done. 12 weeks, $65,000. I think that's something that I'm willing to move forward with. I would like to hear a little bit more, but my question has to do with how you're going to interrelate with our Human Resources Department. How will that go, and what burdens will you place on them during this process, knowing that they're sitting back there?
Right. It's a rather easy process for the HR team to work with a firm like ours. We're going to put a data request together and say, give us your job descriptions, give us the data on your pay structure and so forth. And then we're going back and crunching all the numbers. There's not a lot of work that we create. I don't know if that was the answer I was supposed to give, but it's there's work involved for the HR team, but we're going to do most of the heavy lifting.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thank you. I have a couple questions.
Yes,
This is good government, actually. It may not seem like it, but going back and forth, I think the unions want the best for our employees. The administration wants the best for our employees. And the legislature, council wants the best for our employees. Sure. Certainly everything's within reason, because ultimately it's the taxpayer picking up the tab. So that's where we're all wanting to end up. Now, over the years, I know I've seen there's been pay studies and pay studies. There are pay studies that break out every little job and go here and go there. But this isn't that. You're taking an overview.
Right.
You're getting the information, but you're not getting into the this little specifics of pay grade 45. Right. And that's fine, because that's your presentation, actually, I appreciate it. It was very good. You're taking a point in time and you're going to look at the overview.
Yes.
And give us that. That's great.
Yes, correct.
The thing, though, you mentioned benefits. That's your bag. So I'm going to actually go to a benefits question.
Please.
So you don't feel you waste any time. So the thing is, we've experienced, I think, what others have. And you mentioned COVID, and I agree. And I'm still waiting to see some of the fallout. I was reading a Money's report, and I've seen it on the news. Like, employers now are starting to lay people off.
Yes.
And I wonder if that's a function of during COVID, they gave them much more money. And now we're getting back to the old capitalism, which is, well, why do I need to pay you X amount? I can bring a new person and then pay them this much because, we don't have to. And I know there's a labor shortage, but only in some areas, not in every area. So I guess where I'm at is we've always relied on our benefits. That has been a big thing with county government. We have said to people at times over the years, we may not have the best pay, but you're going to get the best benefits that can possibly be given. Retiree, a real retirement plan, not a contribution. I mean, a defined benefit plan.
Yes.
And also healthcare, which is our employees. If somebody says to me, I'm leaving because of our county benefits, I say, well, good luck. I mean, if you want to argue pay, we can always argue pay, but when you look at benefits and you ask about the private sector and that, you're going to look at benefits on the benefits side, you're going to look at both private and public?
Yes.
And B, have you noticed a change in the work you do that to young people today, and I guess that's really the root of this. When I was young, it was my parents, benefits, 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 benefits. But they don't seem to hold that in high regard. I don't know if it's with their general lack of trust in government or authority now, or faith in government. Have you noticed that in the work you do, that the benefit piece of it doesn't hold the strength that it always held? Because it always held a lot of strength in Northampton County. Excuse me.
It's a wonderful question, and I'll give.
I'm glad you said that.
Yes.
Hopefully my critics took note.
Perhaps a complex, it requires a complex answer, and I'll try to keep it brief.
And I'm sorry, I didn't want to make it complex. It's just really about benefits.
Well,
I
want
mean as much as they always did to me.
Yes. So benefits mean as much today to younger workers as to middle-aged workers and older workers. The difference is what we look at in terms of importance in benefit programs is very different based on the demographics of the population. And I think savvy employers recognize that. I just did a national webinar last week for the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans, which is the premier organization for people who do what I do in employee benefits. So they asked me to do a national webinar on how benefits should be seen through a diversity, equity, and an inclusion lens. And what I talked about to this national audience last week is the fact that, I asked the question, are we offering benefit programs from the 1970s? Because if we are, we're probably missing a big portion of our workforce if we base our benefit programs on what was important when, back when I was born in the 60s. So, I grew up and certain things were really important to my mom and dad, but things have changed over the years. And the savvy employers are the ones saying, maybe it's great that we have a defined benefit plan, but a lot of younger employees probably don't give that much. They don't care. They would rather have paid time off, and as an actuarial firm, we can say that's a great thing that you have a defined benefit retirement plan. But if your employees don't understand the value, they may be looking more for your paid time off benefits. I mentioned age as an issue for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but there's also race. There's sexual orientation. There's a number of things that are important when we help clients look through a DEI lens at their benefit programs. The other big thing I'll mention is it's on benefits. It's one thing to have great benefits on paper, but if you don't do a good job communicating the benefits, then that's where you can be falling short. And we see that time and time again, particularly in the public sector, where employees simply don't recognize how good they have it. Because if they go to work for a manufacturing company, they got these really glitzy brochures on their benefit programs that probably are not as rich as the county, but they look really, really good because they have glitzy brochures and they got great websites. And so that's one of the things you should be mindful of, not only the benefits you offer, but how well they're communicated. So,
there's an old saying, selling the sizzle, but not the steak.
Right.
And so the glitziness is, now you answered, thank you, I appreciate it. Go ahead. And if I had this here, I think you got it. My concern when it comes to pay, I think in most cases our pay is really decent. There are areas where the starting pay, and you brought up the pandemic, and I don't know. I think we're still feeling the effects of that, as I mentioned earlier with the private sector. I don't know that. I think there's a long-term, just like they have long-term COVID, I think there's long-term effects in the employment market, and we don't know yet how that's going to impact hiring and what people want. So I think we're in a tricky situation now due to the entire COVID situation. And I don't think we're out of that yet, and I have no idea when that's going to happen, but I look forward to hearing more. Mr. Cusick, you want to speak?
I just wanted to make a motion that we place this as a resolution on our next meeting's agenda in March.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the
If there are no other
opportunity.
questions for, oh,
March 2nd?
thank you. You'll get a letter.
All right. Thank you all very much. I'll stick around. Thank you.
No, you don't have to stick around, trust me. Mr. Barron, I see you coming, and I'm definitely going to recognize you.
Well, there's another agenda item, so.
I know, and we don't want to hold her up, so.
Okay, so RFP for the Grace Sale Study. We asked about some statistics, and I'll give those to you. We had 47 people access the study, and we received 4 bids. 3 of the bids were from outside of the state. One of those bids was over $600,000, okay? There's $400,000 in your budget, and council could not afford that. So obviously, that one was off the table. Procurement presented the RFPs as we talked about. And one of the things as I was reviewing the RFPs to determine how I was going to proceed with what I received, we got an RFP from Affinity Healthcare Services. And Candace is here today to do a presentation from them. Mr. Heckman, you did point out earlier, yes, Affinity does our mock surveys. They are part of the Pennsylvania Coalition of Affiliated Healthcare and Living Communities. So they are part of PACA, who we use for a lot. They are part of the County Commissioners Association. So you probably have run into Ms. Candace at some of your meetings previously. Since they do our mock survey, the one great thing about them that I noticed from their RFP and their presentation here is they tell us where we're deficient, but they never get to make any recommendations, and not just on the things that the Department of Health look at, but also on how we are doing operationally. And having that knowledge of what CCAP talks about and PACA and all the things related to a local nursing home. Nobody else was local. I heard council talk about we need people from Pennsylvania, we need people locally. I was actually kind of disappointed. There's another company that does the same things along with Affinity Healthcare. I was disappointed. They downloaded the bid and they downloaded the RFP, but they didn't bid. But Affinity did bid. They're from Indiana, Pennsylvania. They are familiar with how nursing homes work in Pennsylvania, which is to me, and I think to county council, should be very important. So I'm going to have Candace come up here and talk a little bit about her proposal. Again, I will forward you her RFP. You'll have it when you come in tomorrow, or if you receive it via email.
What's the cost on this one?
This cost is actually $39,980.
So I was just curious.
Yep.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. You're
Right here.
yeah, you got
Yep, okay.
Hi, Candace. If could
Thank
just
you.
Give your name and title again.
Yes, Candace McMullen, CANDACE, MCMULLEN. And I currently serve as the Executive Vice President of Business Development and Consulting with Affinity Health Services. And I don't know if you have the presentation, but if you flip to page 2, it has my information there for future reference. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. I do want to just give a little bit of an overview about Affinity. I do recognize some of you from CCAP, John. And as Steve said, you know, we are very rooted in PACA, which is the county home affiliated, or the trade organization for the county homes. And we work with a number of county homes, which I'll get to. But Affinity Health Services is a management and a consulting company. We are located in Indiana, PA. Our consultants, however, are located all across Pennsylvania. We have 2 divisions at Affinity. We have a managed division, so we have 8 communities across the state that we provide comprehensive management services to. And then we have about another 100 to 125 organizations that we've provided consulting services to over some period of time. And those services, we can go through the list. There's actually on page 3, the page that says About Affinity, there's a list of, and certainly it's not an all-inclusive list of services that we provide, but we do a fair amount of what we call regulatory clinical services. We also do a fair amount of operations assessments or operations analysis, which is the RFP that we bid on for here. In fact, we just finished up 2 of those in the last 3 months. We also, along with those operations assessments, we offer implementation assistance. So sometimes when we do the assessment and we make the recommendations for change, sometimes there's not enough either bandwidth internally, or sometimes there's not the knowledge or know-how internally. And so we can support the on-site team in being able to implement the recommendations that were made as part of that operations assessment. We provide financial advisory services to some of our clients. We do strategic planning, and along with that, we do a lot of financial projections and scenario analysis. Marketing and business development is another piece of our consulting services, human resources, advisory, and consulting. We work with developers as well as lenders, banks that lend, money to senior living organizations that sometimes they'll contract with us to take a look at an organization that maybe operationally is not doing well, to advise the bank as to whether or not the organization is viable and what the opportunity for turnaround may be for that. And then we have an entire billing division where we perform billing services for some clients. We do all of the government and third-party insurance billing for them. So we've been in business now over 26 years. And for the vast majority of that time, we have worked with county-owned and operated nursing facilities. I went back and looked at the counties that we've serviced in the 26 years. We've worked with 16 of those county nursing homes in some capacity, whether that be comprehensive management services or whether that be consulting services in some fashion. As Steve said, we're part of CCAP, and we currently are a partner for Graysdale. I did want to include, though, the projects that we currently work on with Graysdale. So they're very targeted and very focused on specific things. One of those projects that we do with them is we have, since 2019, we've done an annual mock survey. So that's like a pre-readiness assessment where we have a team of nurses, operators, who come into the facility. There's usually about 5 to 6 of us who will come in, and we will take a look from a regulatory compliance standpoint to see where the gaps are, based on where the facility, the current reality, where the facility is operating versus, what's required from a regulatory compliance standpoint or from a best practice standard. Because remember, regulatory compliance is a minimum standard. So we look from a best practice standard as well. So we will do this pre-survey readiness assessment or clinical operations assessment. People call it different things. And we provide, a verbal and a written report to the management team with respect that shows all of our findings. Here's everything that we found, that we've identified through this survey. On site, we're typically there about 4 or 5 days. There's some work that's done, off-site, but I would say the whole process from beginning to end, just for this mock survey or pre-survey readiness piece, is 2 to 3 weeks, in terms of total. And you can see that, we really do very comprehensive. I mean, it's medical record reviews. We do various interviews, document reviews, observations, of workflows, those types of things. We also, since 2021, have worked with the MDS coordinators at Graysdale. So there's a department that does assessments. They do these, and they're called minimum data sets. They're a required assessment that the government requires that all nursing homes do, and that assessment is used for the basis of a number of things. Number one, it's used as the basis for your survey. It's used as the basis for your 5-star rating. It's used as the basis for your reimbursement. So, and it's also used as the basis for your quality measure scores that are listed on the CMS website. So we work with those MDS coordinators. You had some turnover in that department, and so we've done some training with those folks. We've helped them to implement some tools and systems to be more efficient and more effective, and to also code the MDS more accurately, because there's very specific coding rules for that. The third thing that we've worked in, and this has just been a very recent piece, there was some turnover in the accounting department, and so we've provided some advisory services for some of the accountants and folks as it relates to your payroll-based journal reporting, which feeds into your 5-star, and also as it relates to like your stimulus payment reporting and those requirements as it relates to that. So I know that there was, a comment or a concern maybe related to the fact that, we currently do work with Graysdale, and we have done work in Graysdale since 2019. I think in terms of, and I don't know if the concern was related to maybe objectivity or, can we be objective, with respect to, how we approach this operations assessment. What I will tell you is that, the operations assessment is a very comprehensive, which is what you put the RFP out for that we just recently bid on, is a very comprehensive look-see of your entire organization. You're looking at every ancillary department. You're looking at nursing department. You're looking at administration. You're looking at the resident experience. You're looking at the care and services that are provided. You're looking at the employee experience. It's all encapsulated under that assessment. These three pieces that we're currently working with Graysdale on are very focused. They're very focused on very specific areas. Here's what we need as an organization, and here's what we provide for you as consultants. And so our process actually mirrors very much what the gentleman that preceded me up here, spoke about. The process from beginning to end is usually about 90 days for a true operations assessment. It starts with a data request list. We put together a pretty extensive data request list. We work with the administrative team, and we set up like a shared file. And really what it is they gather information. They're not having to create anything. It's really they're gathering the information. And they dump it into that shared file. We pick it up, our team, and we have a team of folks. We have finance, we have billing, we have HR, we have clinical operators, marketing and admissions. So we have the entire team who are representatives from the entire team that are assigned to work on our ops assessment projects. And so our team takes that data from Graysdale, and we will manipulate that data, and we will look at certain key performance indicators. There are certain things in the industry that are pretty standard with respect to those things that you measure that are kind of representative of how your organization is functioning, whether it's representative of the effectiveness, or it sometimes could be representative of the efficiency of the organization. So we've identified those KPIs, and we will manipulate your data so that we can understand the current reality at Graysdale. We take that information, and our team goes on site. And then we structure our on-site time, which is usually several days. Medical record reviews, document reviews. We interview residents, staff. I think in the RFP we propose to do some actually focus groups, with certain levels of staff. Just to collect more information, because, obviously, key performance indicators are one piece of it, but once we get that information, then we have to really kind of go dig in and at the granular level and see, what the true reality really is. And so once we have that information, then obviously we're looking for gaps. We're looking to see, okay, are there things that Graysdale's doing that could make them more effective, that could increase or improve their performance outcomes, like maybe their quality measures or their 5-star rating or their survey process, or pick one. Or we would look at it and say, okay, could they operate more efficiently? Because in this environment, particularly on the nursing home industry, finances are a big concern, just in general, across the industry. So we're always looking for, opportunities from a financial standpoint. Can the place operate more efficiently? And would there be financial opportunities, from a cost savings standpoint? And so, we collect all of that, all of our, recommendations, all of our findings, and then obviously all of our recommendations. And then, our recommendations are really grounded in industry experience. I often say that you can engage, there's a number of organizations that do consulting. We do management and consulting, and I think that sets us apart because we do what Graysdale does every day for those 8 communities that we provide comprehensive management services for. So there's not a challenge or an obstacle or an issue that Graysdale has that we haven't already experienced and that our team has had to work through in terms of being able to troubleshoot that. So from a consulting side, I think our consulting customers really get much better quality, more quality work product because of our experiences on the managed side of the business. And so again, we not only give you, here's our findings, and there are some companies that will do that. Here's our findings. Good luck with that. We give you our findings and we say, okay, here's how you can make this better. Here's our recommendations. And here's where these recommendations come from. It's either regulatory compliance, it's a best practice standard, or it relates to efficiency, to make you more efficient. There's a cost savings typically associated with that. And so we show you, here's your current reality. Here's what we recommend that you do, and here's what your operations would look like if you made these changes, either financially or, from a KPI, from an indicator standpoint. And so here's, point A, you want to get to point B, here's how to do that, here's what that would look like. And then, obviously on the back end of that, once everything's, once the report's done and issued, and, we obviously present that to, a variety of folks, certainly, that would be driven by, whoever is engaging us. And, at that point, then, there can be assistance, with implementing those recommendations if need be, if necessary. So just to, again, to kind of walk you through our process, it's all very outlined in our response to the RFP. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on that, but again, beginning to end is probably 90 to 120 days.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? Mr. Kusick.
Just a comment, I want to thank you for all the time you've spent working with CCAP. I know we're down to about 15 counties that are still in the nursing home business, and it is a challenge. One of the things that we've looked at our home is we still have 4 patients or residents to a room.
Right.
As part of this, we know that that's no longer the standard of care. As part of this assessment, is that something that you can look at and give us a report on?
Yes, absolutely.
Easy enough. Thank you.
Other questions? You look like you're thinking. Do you have a question?
Yeah, but I'm trying to think about how to ask
All right, let
it.
me ask a question and then you formulate your brain. Or I'm sorry, your question. But I don't think, I certainly don't have a problem as far right now as the objectivity. I mean, yes, you're right. You're at CCAP, you've been doing these things for a long, long time. And I think what you had said, I think what the intent was to get an overview, because the reason people have gotten out of this and the challenges we have is we have a large facility, as you well know, and it's not as mobile, let's say, as Lehigh County, who had multiple buildings and could do things. We built our tower back in, was it the 70s? So, I mean, we're sort of where we are and what we have. And you know full well about our census. And in terms of getting employees, we're trying to come up with something. We've talked about the right size. There's many of us who feel we still need a county nursing home. because who knows where the market is, especially with boomers and the lack of savings amongst many. And I personally think there's a place for a county nursing home. But having said that, and making sure we can sustain it is another matter. So I think that's what we were, I know from my end when this came up, I think everybody is doing the best they can out there.
Sure.
I think people are certainly well aware of the situation. And we were thinking, well, maybe if we could get a fresh set of eyes to just tell us what they see, maybe we can implement it, maybe we can't.
Right.
But I mean, so I don't have a problem with your affiliation. I certainly don't have a problem with your affiliation. It sounds like you can differentiate an overview versus what you do day to day. And probably your experience with the county homes who have been in the same situation is probably actually a very big plus.
Right.
So
I think, Mr. Heckman, to your point, lots of organizations, senior living, nursing home organizations are in the very same boat that you're talking about right now, looking at, here we have this number of beds. We don't know that we need this number of beds. We need to, and those are called what we in the industry refer to as repositioning projects. We do a number of repositioning projects. In fact, we're getting a number of those right now because everybody's in the same boat. They're sitting with these, floors or some are entire floors, entire units that are empty.
Yeah.
Because either they can't get residents, and that was coming off of COVID, but then shortly thereafter, it was we couldn't get staff, So, until that kind of balances out, what do we do about that? So we're actually, we look at that, and certainly that could be, woven into a project, very similar to this.
All right, and you're right. I mean, funding, how we get funding, how the state appropriates money is a big part of it. Personally, I wish, it's one of my wish lists, I wish that the state would be a little bit more open with allowing us to use Medicaid for assisted living to a point. And I know the industry's out there lobbying.
Right.
Like, I'll get out, you'll take people from us. But I think the only people we would take is those who couldn't afford to go into assisted living. And, it would be nice if we could at least have a few beds based on income. And I don't know if you look at that, but it probably is a non-doable thing anyway. But that's been brought up over the years at different times. And it's always been, of course, well, they're gonna have to pay for it out of their, their funds,
Right.
Social Security or whatever. So is that something that you can touch on, or is that not something you would be looking at?
I'm not sure I understand, about holding beds.
Is it possible, is there a way we could have a few beds put aside for somebody who doesn't qualify for a skilled nursing home, but who needs assisted living, yet they do not have the income? I believe it's like $2,500 to $3,000 a month.
Right.
And that's a shared room in assisted living. Is it conceivable that the county could have a few beds, since we have beds now?
There are programs out there, and there are opportunities to actually convert portions of your nursing home to personal care or assisted living, and to look at maybe even independent living and subsidize that through home and community-based services. So there definitely are options, and I've seen a number of scenarios that organizations have utilized, as a vehicle to kind of service the population that kind of gets stuck, like you said.
Right. Well, and also trying to be flexible. I can go back, I've been around a long time, but there was a time when Graysdale was very straightforward in there. They didn't want anybody from the county coming out there. We do our thing, we're getting money, don't tell us what to do. And they would say that to executives, they'd say it to directors, they'd say it to council. And they were very slow to see what was coming and to change, and we had to bring some people in, and they used their power to get the people fired once the things changed. So I mean, it's tough. But now I think our administration at the home and here know the situation, know the challenges,
Sure.
and are more adaptable to making changes. Of course, they all have to be cost conscious, so
Right.
so, you know, it's like with the gentleman before, it's a balancing act.
Yep.
And that's the tough thing. So, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, have you formulated your question?
Yeah, I did.
Now I can stop. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Biller. I think I heard you say it would be a 90-day process, is that correct?
Yeah, usually it's 90 to 120 days. I think maybe your proposal requested that it was completed in 90 days, I think.
I don't have that copy,
Okay.
so hopefully I'll see that tomorrow. So at the end, who will you give your final report to?
Whoever you tell me, whoever I'm directed to give that to.
Okay.
There are some engagements where we are engaged directly from the county commissioners or the county council. There are some that we're directed to work with the county executive. There are some that we're directed to work with the nursing home administrator. I mean, it just depends on who, where. We don't care. I mean, we're fine with working with whoever. We just need to be given some direction.
Well, as you heard at the very beginning of the meeting, before you were even allowed to speak,
Yeah.
there might be some controversy
Yeah.
about that, but hopefully.
It sounds like
we'll
you guys have
clarify
some
it.
decisions to make.
Yeah. Yes. To me.
And I don't want any
to
parts of
me,
that.
The best answer to that question would be if you could independently provide it to all three, because I think the original intent was to have an independent look at this. So if you would present that info independently to all three entities, I
Sure.
think that would be a fair compromise. But, you know, rather than having it
Absolutely.
filtered prior till it got to the others. But I guess my only question is, like, you have a lot of knowledge of the facility and the people that are here, and then you have great Pennsylvania-based knowledge, but how do you think the employees will receive you? And do you think they will see you as independently auditing them? Or will they make the assumption, oh, they were here before, or they're aligned with the administration? So how can we get past that? Like, obviously, you're going to do an objective lens, but you're also going to have to meet with them and do different levels of process. So
Yeah, that's a
how will
great
you
question.
compensate for that?
I'm not sure truly how many of and when you say employees, you know, when we do pre-survey mock surveys, we're mostly working with administration and some of the department directors, obviously. The line staff may see us, you know, because we go out, we make observations, we interview residents, we maybe talk to families, you know, about their care and services, but I don't know that we interface with them. I mean, we're there for 4 or 5 days once a year. So I really don't know that they see us as kind of part of their team, so to speak. The MDS support that we give is provided by one of our consultants. And that person works really directly with the RNAC team. Again, I don't know that she's really all that exposed to the vast majority of the employees there. I just don't foresee that would be even on their radar.
So I guess I just ask it more directly then. Do you feel that you could give a very independent, impartial review, having had already a working relationship with some of the staff there? Because again, we're looking for.
Sure.
We're looking for, and we're not looking to.
We're going to give you the facts. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, you know, if you look at the second page of Affinity's core values, I mean, the very first top one is integrity. You know, so we're going to tell you the truth, regardless of whether it's a popular answer or not a popular answer, whether, you know, that is, you know, upsetting to one group or another group. Like, the truth is the truth. And so, again, we're going to look for certain key performance indicators. You know, here's the industry standard, or here's how operations that are similarly situated to you or to Graysdale operate, and here's where Graysdale's operating. Those are facts. Like, I can't manipulate them.
Right. And who are the 4 entities that you do currently manage?
We manage one, and that's Indiana County, and we consult with 3, Crawford County, Lehigh County, and Bucks County.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I think.
Thank you.
Can I?
Sure.
Can I make,
I didn't know.
yeah, no, not a question. I just wanted to make a motion that we place this resolution on the March 2nd agenda. And my suggestion would be that the presentation be given at a Human Services Committee meeting when their findings are complete.
Sure. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
I appreciate it. All right, that's the agenda. Is there anything else for the good of the order? I have one question that can have a real quick answer, and if Mr. McClure would answer it, if he's willing to.
Am I recognized?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are recognized if you wish to be.
Making sure.
You are recognized if you wish to be. There was a lot of controversy about the language of the charter, and you know as well as I do, there's a lot of may and can between the administrative code and the charter. Mr. Barron had said you can have a member of council there. You chose not to. Could you give the reason why you chose not to?
Well, sure. What Mr. Barron says, the reason he chose to go that way was because of the timeframes that were involved. Of course, we had the controversy over the policies in the first instance, where I opposed them, I vetoed it, we went through that process, and we ended up where we were at. And irrespective of my point of view as to whether these reviews are necessary or not, or a waste of money, is irrelevant once that ordinance is overridden, and it is then my job to go and procure those services. And I think we did that, and I think Mr. Barron did an excellent job doing that, and he brought you two very fine companies that are going to get you to where you wanted to be originally.
So your answer is you didn't feel it would be timely to involve a council member?
I thought once we saw the 90 days, we needed to go and get that as fast as we possibly could, and Mr. Barron did it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just curious. I mean, he gave us the official, and I wanted to hear what you had to say.
That is the answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have a question for the executive, since he's recognized and he's allowing himself to be recognized? That's it from us. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. We're adjourned. Go home. Kiss your dogs. Or whatever you choose to kiss.